So Corgan Krause CPAs manufacturing. Going to touch on some tax and some consulting um, pieces of information I think would be beneficial for manufacturing businesses. Also, some services that we can provide that we have provided to manufacturing clients in the past that proved to be very beneficial. But just want to first put a little baseline as to who Corgan Krause is, what we do, kind of what we're all about. So we are an accounting and advising firm. We like to say that we help with your accounting and advising needs for your future. We are a team of dedicated, passionate, experienced professionals who provide comprehensive accounting, tax, consulting services and solutions to individuals and privately held businesses to help make informed financial decisions. We're committing to building relationships and providing comprehensive solutions to clients in some of Northeast Ohio's most booming industries. And today we're specifically focusing on manufacturing, but we also work with the construction, nonprofit, the services industry, healthcare, dental, and real estate. And we have experts in those areas to help with any kind of needs that you may have. We have 3 locations. Our main hub is in Westlake. We have an outpost out in Mayfield Heights, as well as in Medina, which is where I sit. We have 2 joint ventures that are very beneficial to our clients, especially those in manufacturing space. One is CKE Financial Services, and this is a partnership with an investment firm that we're able to provide clients personal financial services as well as corporate financial services, specifically around retirement planning. So manufacturers, whether you're an integrated person in the manufacturing chain, as far as maybe you're in the finance team or maybe you're the owner of the manufacturing company, corporate retirement plans, if you have one, great. It's always a good idea to kind of look and refresh, see what can we do, what can we be offering for not only the benefit of ourselves, but for our employees. We also work closely with and partly own a company called DMS Management Services. And this is a great fit for a lot of our clients that need help with accounting and bookkeeping. Maybe it's the day-to-day bookkeeping. Maybe it's a higher level. Maybe it's a controller or CFO type level of need in the financial sector to kind of say, hey, what's going on with our finances? How are we doing? You might be really good in the space of knowing how to run the business, knowing how to manufacture what you manufacture, but maybe you need a little help from that financial side, and DMS is able to provide that. They also provide help with accounting technology services. So maybe you're looking to implement a new system. Maybe you need some help with some type of job costing component in looking at specific software. DMS is able to help with that as well. A little bit about myself. So I'm a tax senior manager. I work from a tax and consulting services for individuals, businesses, business owners, and more. I am in the manufacturing niche. So work with a lot of our manufacturing clients. And previous to my tenure here at Corgan Krause, I worked with Grant Thornton in the state and local tax department, where, again, a majority of our clients in that working out of the Cleveland office were in the manufacturing sector. So well-versed and happy to help in any way that we can. So some learning objectives today from a tax perspective. Want to touch base on 5 topics that I think are important. They're important to know. They're important to take advantage of if possible, and just kind of overall understanding. So the first one is the commercial activities tax. There's an update there that's important that hopefully everyone is aware of. The next one is just talking about economic nexus and sales tax implications. You may think, hey, we're manufacturers, we don't have to worry about sales tax, but some points of interest to discuss there. Also, bonus depreciation in Section 179, some changes coming down the pipe, as well as the research and development credit. And then lastly, touch base on new tax legislation that is in the air right now in Congress called the Tax Relief for American Families and Workers. It's quite a mouthful, and we'll work through that. So from a consulting perspective, just want to touch base on a few services and ideas that could be beneficial from a tax savings perspective, but also from an overall facility perspective, HR consulting, cost segregation, employee bonus programs, and then some manufacturing specific services that we're able to offer our clients that are very beneficial. So the first item on the agenda today is the commercial activities tax. Many are likely familiar, skipped ahead too far, many are likely familiar with the CAT, often referred to the CAT tax. This is Ohio, a number of years ago, transitioned away from an income level tax at the corporation and went to this commercial activities tax, which said, hey, if you have activity in the state of Ohio, if you sell products in Ohio or to Ohio, the state is going to tax those gross receipts. The good news is, for the majority of companies out there, this is actually going to be going away. So if your Ohio gross receipts are $3 million or less, effective January 1st, 2024, the CAT is no longer applicable, which means if you don't project to have $3 million in sales in 2024 that are Ohio-based sales, you should cancel your CAT account as of 12/31/2023. You still need to file an annual return for 23, but after that, there's no filing requirement. But you got to close the account, and you still have to file that final annual return. Anything, if you expect to be gross receipts exceeding $3 million, anything above $3 million will be taxed at 0.26%. So they're kind of transitioning it to where they looked at the numbers and said the majority of our taxpayers are paying the minimum $150 annual fee. We're going to get away with this because it's administrative burden. So $3 million this year. If it's anything above, it's 0.26%. Anything below, you don't need to file. In 2025, the bar gets raised even higher. So 2025, January 1st, if your Ohio gross receipts are $6 million or less, the CAT is no longer applicable. And in this case, you would cancel your account as of 12/31/2024. You would still need to file that final return, which would be in this, in the early part of 2025. And if you have any gross receipts exceeding $6 million, again, that'll be taxed at 0.26%. So previously, you had to file every year. If you had over $1 million in sales, you were filing on a quarterly basis. The rules are changing now, and this is going to be a benefit to a lot of taxpayers out there, not only in tax savings, but also just from an administrative perspective. Make sure that if you file the CAT in-house, that you're taking these steps if they're applicable. If not, if you have your accounting firm do that for you, it's important just to make sure that they're handling that for you to cancel those if necessary. On to the next topic, economic nexus and sales tax. So this dates back a few years, but something that is always good to kind of refresh and have a conversation around. So where did this all begin? So in 2018, South Dakota versus Wayfair Inc. Had a court case that went all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court. And this really changed the landscape on how states can assess nexus. The U.S. Supreme Court ruled in favor of South Dakota. In what that ruling said was essentially that physical presence is no longer required to determine if you had a filing requirement with a specific state. And the term nexus is really just a connection to a state. And so this really changed the landscape, because pre this court case, if you didn't have physical property, a building or payroll in a state, even if you had activity in that state, you said, hey, we don't have any activity, we don't have a nexus connection to the state, we don't need to file sales tax, we don't need to collect, we don't need to remit, any of that. This has changed the landscape. So now, post this court case, most states have enacted filing thresholds that, once exceeded, require your business to register, collect, and remit sales tax. For the majority of states out there, not all, but a majority of states, if your annual sales exceed $100,000 in that state, or 200 separate transactions into that state, you are more likely than not going to be required to register for sales tax, collect sales tax on any transactions, and then remit those sales tax with sales tax returns on a monthly, quarterly, or annual basis. And you may say to yourself, but we're manufacturers. We are exempt. We sell to other manufacturers or distributors that are also exempt. And you may have a fair point there. But what's important to note is that there's a difference between being statutorily required to register and collect and remit, versus not having a tax liability. So you may say, hey, our sales are exempt. We sell to a distributor. We collect exemption certificates. That's great, and you should be doing that. You should know, though, that administratively speaking, the statute in most states reads that if you have gross receipts, not taxable, not non-taxable, gross receipts. So it could come down to, hey, you might have a requirement in 10 states. You have to register, you have to collect tax, you'd have to file returns. But when you go to file those returns, because you sell to a distributor or to maybe another manufacturer that says I'm exempt, you would file the return, say you have 100,000 in sales, 100,000 of those sales are exempt, and you have zero tax that you collected, zero tax to remit. But there still is potentially a filing requirement. We recommend analyzing your sales data on a sales by state basis, and really you should be looking at this on a yearly basis. It does become administrative burden, especially for small to medium-sized manufacturing companies. This can be quite cumbersome, but still important if you are ever to get audited. Some states can be very aggressive with sales tax, and such that if maybe a vendor that you use or a customer in a different state, they may be under audit for sales tax, and that state may say, hey, give us a list of your vendors. If you show up on that list and you're not having any kind of activity, the state could very well contact you. Now, the other thing to point out, I mentioned a few times about exemption certificate, and those are great, but the process of managing that becomes really important. So if you say all of our sales are exempt, if you were to become under audit, the state would say, okay, show us your exemption certificates. If you're unable to garnish those certificates, valid certificates, the state could just come back and assess sales tax penalties on you for saying, hey, you should have collected, why didn't you collect? You don't have the certificate to prove it. So that part becomes very important. So we want to say, hey, what's your possible sales tax exposure? What we would look at is say, hey, can you provide a sales by state analysis for the past 3 to 5 years? We'd review your current sales tax filing positions, and then we'd look to say, hey, what customer exemption certificates do you have on file? How do you manage them? How do you make sure that they're relevant? Most are good for 3 to 5 years. So you really should be taking a look at all this with your team. And then the other added layer of complexity is, do you sell on a marketplace? Do you sell via Amazon? If you're oftentimes, again, manufacturer maybe is not selling to the end user, but in some cases you could be. You know, if you are selling on an Amazon or an eBay or some kind of intermediary, there could be the possibility that they are collecting that for you and kind of take that burden from you. All in all, if you do find that there is potential liability that becomes in excess of a few $100s, most states have programs called voluntary disclosure application programs. And what this allows for is for a company to come clean and say, hey, we had sales, we should have probably had sales tax that we collect and remit. We think we owe some tax. We want to come forward and kind of get clean. We want to get caught up, and we want to file on the going forward. The voluntary disclosure programs are great because oftentimes the states, it's a benefit for them too, because they're going to get additional tax revenue. And those programs usually have a limited look back. So if you are under audit, there may be no look back. It could go back 7-10 years plus. Under voluntary disclosure, the look back period is usually 3 to 4 years. With saying that, the voluntary disclosure program often provides for penalty relief. So if you have a bunch of tax that you have owed for the last couple of years, the state's going to assess penalties of usually up to 25% of that tax. The voluntary disclosure program allows for an opportunity of penalty relief. So that's also a benefit of that program and something that we help clients out a lot with. On to the next topic, bonus depreciation and 179 changes. So what is bonus depreciation? Probably many of you out there are familiar with this. All this allows for an accelerated depreciation on qualifying fixed assets in the year of purchase. This really was most beneficial thanks to the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017, also referred to as TCJA, which that tax legislation change allowed for businesses to deduct 100% of the fixed asset costs in the year of purchase. And that was in effect from January 1st, 2017 through December 31st of 2022. Fast forward, we're now in 2024. We've gone through the whole year of 23. And so January 1st, 2023, as a result of this provision sunsetting, is now beginning to phase out. So the phase out began in 2023, where in 2023, any qualifying fixed assets that qualified for bonus depreciation were only eligible for an 80% deduction, which is again different than the treatment in the last 5 years of 100%. The remaining 20% then is depreciated according to the maker's depreciation tables, which essentially takes the time, the life of the asset, and you get a little bit of the remaining depreciation over the life of the asset. In 24, it goes down to 60%. In 2025, it goes down to 40, 20, and then it phases out completely in 2027 for bonus depreciation going away. When it does finally go away, it will go back to the maker's depreciation tables, where the assets will be depreciated over the useful life of their time. So essentially, all of this, the provision that allowed for 100% bonus depreciation, really was an excellent way to save taxes. You buy a piece of equipment for $1 million. In year one, that year that you place it in service, you get $1 million deduction on your tax return, saving, if it's a flow through entity at the highest rate, you're going to save $370,000 in taxes, which has been very beneficial for manufacturers and companies alike that are able to use the bonus depreciation to accelerate the timing of the expense recognition. This is something that going forward we can kind of work around with the Internal Revenue Code section 179. So 179 is aimed at smaller businesses. So it's aimed at small to medium businesses, and it allows for the immediate expensing similar to bonus depreciation. This has been there for years, but with the advent of the 100% bonus depreciation, the 179 kind of fell to the wayside a little bit. Wasn't utilized as much because it didn't need to be. So 179 applies to qualifying property, like I said, that can be expensed in the year of purchase. This property can include, not limited to, machines and manufacturing equipment, personal property that is used for the business, computers and software, office furniture and equipment, qualified improvement property. Vehicles are included in here, but I have a note down there. There are limitations on the amount of 179 that can be used for vehicle deductions. So the maximum deduction for 179 that you can take in a year is $1,160,000, and that's for 2023. There are some limitations as far as how much you can take as far as equipment purchases. So if you purchase $2,890,000 of equipment purchases, that's the max you can purchase. Anything above that, you start reducing your benefit of the $1.16 million deduction. So there are some limitations. Again, why it hasn't quite been used in the past is because bonus, you can take as much as you want. The other main limitation with 179 is that it can't take the business into a loss from a taxable income perspective. So if you had before 179 or depreciation, you had $100,000 of income, but you have $200,000 of fixed assets that you purchased, placed in service, you want to take a deduction, you're only able to use 179 up to $100,000. Bonus depreciation would have allowed you to take a loss in the year that could then be applied against other income if it's, again, flow through to the business owner's personal tax return. The vehicle limitations, it is for SUVs or luxury vehicles, it's around $10,000. For vehicles that are between 6,000 and 14,000 pounds, it's a $28,000 limit. And for vehicles that are heavy use vehicles, 14,000 gross vehicle weight rating, Above 14,000 pounds, they're not limited. You can take 100% of that. Those are going to be more vehicles that are big trucks, heavy duty trucks that are pulling big equipment and would qualify for the entire section there. So another important topic that a lot of manufacturing companies that we work with take advantage of is a research and development credit. Now, the one thing I would say is a couple questions to ask yourself. Is your company doing one of the following? Devoting time and resources to creating new or innovative products or processes? Are you improving existing products or processes? Are you developing patents, prototypes, or software? And or are you hiring designers, engineers, scientists, etc.? If you answered yes, you might be eligible to claim the R&D credit. It's worth looking into. If you're not already taking the R&D credit, I would highly suggest that you pick up the phone, give us a call, or someone a call to say, hey, what is this? Can we qualify it? Can we save money for it? It is dollar for dollar tax credit for the business or shareholder. So if it's a C Corp, it's going to be at a business level tax credit, tax dollar for dollar savings. If it's an S Corp or a partnership, that credit's going to flow through to the shareholders, and they're going to get a dollar for dollar credit on their personal tax returns. And the research and development credit applies to development of new or improved business components, including products, processes, software, techniques, formulas, or inventions that result in new or improved functionality, performance, reliability, or quality. For the R&D credit, the most basic way to think about it is, one, do you have people that are devoting specific amounts of time to improving processes? An easy way to think about it is if you have engineers that are redesigning or designing a new product or trying to tweak something in a product line, that's an easy R&D. But I will say that manufacturing companies can qualify for the R&D in ways that go beyond just the basic eye test of, yeah, we have people that do this. For really kind of complex cases, we often will work with third-party R&D specialist consulting firms that are able to take an R&D credit to a much greater degree, saving the taxpayers way more money than you might think you'd be effective for. So effective in 2022, the IRS requires, so this is a change. So 2021 and before, you were allowed to have R&D credit. You generate these expenses, you identify these expenses that qualify based on all the code sections that say, hey, I can use these expenses to calculate my credit. Starting in 2022, the IRS required that these expenses that were once able to be deducted are now added back and amortized over 5 years. And it's 15 years if they're foreign expenses. So what does this mean? This means you don't get your cake and eat it too. So the IRS used to let you have best of both worlds, and now in the year of expense, so if it's wages, you have $500,000 of wages that are dedicated to R&D, that's an expense. You get a credit based on that expense. Now you're required to add those wages back and deduct them over time, over the course of 5 years. So you're going to get, call it $100,000 deduction a year for the next 5 years. It becomes a timing difference, but the first year that add back can be a significant increase in tax burden. So the R&D credit is still an important feature, but it's also good to note this change here, this add back that's now required. But I say these things with an asterisk because of what's out there right now, and that is the Tax Relief for American Families and Workers Act of 2024. You may ask yourself, tax reform again? And yeah, that seems to be the way of the future with Congress, especially as provisions, as I mentioned, with bonus depreciation. Tax reform in 2017, the TCJA, Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, allowed for 100% bonus depreciation. Didn't allow it it didn't make it permanent. It set it to say, hey, as of 2022 is going to be the last year, you get 100%. Now Congress is looking and saying, hey, wait a minute, some of these things businesses really like, our constituents really like, we might want to take another look at this. So this act, this new tax reform act, It was passed by the House Ways and Means Committee on January 19th of 2024. It then passed short week and a half, 2 weeks later, the House of Representatives with an overwhelming majority vote. So there is a lot of consensus for this bill, at least in the House, and a lot of people think that it has momentum. However, it is currently in the Senate for consideration, but there's no clear timeline when they're going to address it and what that means as far as how they'll address it. So this bill, again, it seems that there's a lot of people that know more about Capitol Hill than I do, especially as far as tax reform may go. It says that the bill faces potential political and procedural hurdles, as well as some potential changes to current provisions, but really there's a good likelihood that some of these provisions are going to get through, and we may see this. Now, Congress said they wanted to get this done at the beginning or at least in the middle of tax season, as we're in the middle of it now. That seems unlikely. There was a few other pressing matters, border control and international funding to Ukraine and Israel, that really kind of took precedent over this measure. So this kind of got pushed to the side. Congress is now on recess until the end of February, at which point they may take it back up. And it seems likely that there will be some concessions made. But what we really are advising clients to look at is really assess the potential impact to determine the best course of action. So what are the key provisions that are applicable for business? There's a lot in this bill. There's some stuff applicable to individuals. There's some international tax treaty measures. But for key business provisions that are really going to touch a lot of clients, especially, again, in the manufacturing sector, are three things. The first thing being the restoring of the expensing of domestic R&D costs retroactive to 2022 and extend the treatment through 2025. 15-year amortization would still apply for foreign R&D costs. So I just mentioned before that in 2022, R&D expenses, the $500,000 of wages in the example I used, were required to be added back, increasing income, increasing the tax bill for that year. Again, those expenses would be recognized over a 5 or 6 year period, but not all at once. What this current legislation, as it currently stands without any changes, would restore the full expensing of those R&D costs retroactive to 2022. So this really is a very favorable measure if it gets through. It's likely that it could happen. It's likely that it couldn't happen. So this was talked all about last year. A lot of companies that were in manufacturing space that had R&D costs and credits chose to extend because there was word, hey, the Congress wants this to happen. Everybody's on board. This should get full expense, but nothing happened last year. Many people feel the same thing will be the case for this year. So, don't hold your breath. What we're advising, every client's different. Some clients are choosing to say, hey, I want to just file my return this year with R&D how I have it. If it does change, we can address it. We can go back and amend a return. There might be some mechanism that the IRS allows for kind of filing without having to amend. We'll see. A lot to be determined here on this, but it definitely something that a lot of clients are looking at and saying, hey, this could be really beneficial and impactful for us. We hope it goes through. Time will tell. Another important measure is that restoration of 100% bonus depreciation. And this would be for assets placed in service from 2023 to 2025. So again, as the current law states that bonus depreciation is only 80% eligible for 2023 assets placed in service 2023. This would say, no, 2023 you're allowed 100%, in 24 you're allowed 100%, 25 you're allowed 100%. Some articles I've read regarding this, there are some people on Capitol Hill that would like to make 100% bonus a permanent provision. We'll see. Again, not holding my breath on any of this. The other key proponent for businesses, and this is your medium to larger size businesses where this mostly affects, is there being a more favorable Category J adjusted taxable income, and this would be retroactive again to 2022 and through 2025. So 163J, essentially this provision came out with tax reform in 2017 that said, a lot of companies incur a lot of debt. They have a lot of interest. We're going to look to limit that interest expense that for certain size companies that this code section applies to. We're going to look to limit it, and there's calculations out there that show what things have to be added back as far as depreciation, amortization, to allow for the 30% deductibility of interest. Again, for a lot of companies, this isn't applicable, but still an important measure. So for all this tax legislation that's out there, stay tuned. There will be more to come, I'm sure, at the end of February, beginning of March. And I'm excited to see what Congress does, if anything, and we'll go from there. So again, if you have any questions on this, please feel free to reach out. So kind of turning the tables from tax to consulting, some consulting services that we can provide and do provide manufacturing clients and clients alike in all industries. The one that's really, I think, is really unique and has been really beneficial for a lot of our clients is our HR consulting. It's kind of unique for a CPA and consulting firm to have an HR component, but we found that for a lot of our clients, they really had a need for this, and so far it's proved to be a good thing. So a lot of our clients that we work with are small to medium size. They might be a family-owned, multi-generational. They're all privately held, and maybe all of a sudden this smaller company that grandma and grandpa own, that mom and dad, now that son and daughter own, it's really starting to take off and is becoming bigger than what they're able to work on. And really, this is something that allows business owners to focus on the business, not just, hey, I got to hire people, I got to worry about HR concerns. This really allows you to stay focused on doing what you do, helping the business grow. So recruiting services that our HR arm can provide is job description, consulting, and writing, job posting on multiple platforms, resume screening, candidate interviewing, job offer consulting, onboarding assistance, salary consulting, personality testing, and background checks. And we really tried to hone in not so much on your day-to-day labor that's going to be working on the floor in the manufacturing facility, but more so in that the key employee level. So maybe it's a controller or accounts payable person or somebody more with a financial minded CFO. We've helped companies and owners kind of work through this process. We have professional HR folks on our team that are able to work hand in hand with our service providers. We may be, go back to this slide. May know a lot about taxes and finances, but I'm not so much the HR brain. So we're able to work together to really say, hey, this is how we should be approaching postings, job descriptions for our clients, and this has really been an effective tool. Another really important thing that can be a very great tax benefit is what's called cost segregation study. And cost segregation, really what this is it applies to real property. So think about your buildings. And it really what it does is it takes a building and it breaks it down into individual components, segregates it into components to accelerate depreciation. So if you think about a building, say you buy a new building, warehouse, or manufacturing facility, and you spend $1 million on this property. Now it's probably a low spend, but just for example purposes, you buy the building, and oftentimes, right, it's not just the shell of the building. It's not just 4 walls and a roof and a floor, right? You have some other pieces, parts in that building. You might have manufacturing equipment. You might have a sprinkler system, HVAC system, all kind of different pieces and parts. And a lot of for manufacturing, oftentimes you're doing things specifically to the building. Maybe you need to have some special build out for a big piece of equipment. What a cost segregation study allows you to say, instead of taking $1 million and building real property is required to be depreciated over 39 years on a straight line basis. So you're taking that kind of a minimal expense and you say, hey, wait a minute, but there's other things in this building that aren't 39 years, right? And so this study, you would go into your facility and say, hey, this over here, that's not 39-year property. That's not a part of the building. We're going to pull this out from the total cost and say, okay, now the building was, so if it was $1 million 100,000 of that's going to be this big piece of equipment that is a standalone piece of equipment that you got with the building. We can take bonus depreciation on that. There's $100,000 expense right there, and so on and so forth. And this really can be a huge tax savings and a benefit for business because of this accelerated depreciation. And it looks to the interior and exterior components. So if this is something you've constructed newly, if you've purchased, if you've expanded or remodeled any kind of real estate, and you haven't looked into cost segregation, would highly recommend that you look into this to see what benefit could be there for you. Something else that we've worked through with our clients, especially in the manufacturing industry, is employee bonus programs. And this really is a unique way to retain and motivate individuals within your company, whether that's hourly workers or key and senior employees. They really goes into the profit sharing of the business. So it's all centered on the profitability of the company. And we can kind of break it down into two different pieces. The first piece really is looking at your key and senior employees, right? As many manufacturing companies that we work with, their key and senior employees, they're really are vital to the success of the organization. Oftentimes the owners are hand in hand involved, but without maybe a key vice president or the CEO, somebody that's really focusing on the day-to-day, driving the business, driving the success of the organization, we want to make sure that we keep those people in play, and we want to continue to motivate those individuals. So how can we do that? Right? One way, which is really, this is again high level, we won't go super into the details, and it would be on a company by company basis, but one idea that we often can implement for key and senior employees is what's called a phantom stock plan. And this is a bonus program that allows key employees to potentially share in profits without business owners having to give up any kind of stock or any kind of actual ownership. And so there's ways to structure this so that if the business is profitable, this key employee will get stock, phantom stock. They'll get a share of essentially the profit. And the motivation there is to help drive profitability so that their share of their phantom stock increases so that they're sharing in a larger portion of the profit. This has really worked great, and this is something that would need to be evaluated on kind of a quarterly or annual basis at the least, but has worked really well for some of our clients and their key employees. The other fact is the potential, if the business is ever, if the owners are ever intent on selling one day or have some type of transition planning or estate planning or really kind of next level planning to say, hey, what are we going to do? How are we going to take value out of this business one day? We want to sell it. We want to pass it on to the next generation. But if we were to sell it, we don't want to just leave our people that have really been vital to the success of the organization out to dry. And so there's ways to enshrine the potential sale with senior employees so that they're going to say, hey, I don't care that much because this owner, they're going to sell soon. I'm not going to see any of this. This really incentivizes them to say, hey, we're in this together. We realize and we appreciate all that you've done for us, and we want to continue to have this company be as successful as possible before we sell it and even afterwards. So we're going to work out a structure. We're going to work out a plan that say, hey, you're going to get a portion of the sales proceeds. So the more profitable we can be, and we could drive up the sales price, that's going to be a benefit to you. Now we go into how do you incentivize hourly workers? So there's different programs we've helped put into play. One could be on a productivity goal-based bonus program, looks on a quarterly basis and working hand in hand with the owners and the key people at the company to say, hey, what does productivity look like today? What do we want it to look like tomorrow? What do we want it to look like next month, next year? So that we can drive profitability of the business, we can drive engagement with our hourly workers, and we can also, provide for the hourly workers to share in the profit. And so this productivity looks at specific metrics depending on what's being manufactured and how the workers are integrated into that manufacturing process. There's also safety bonus programs. So often manufacturing can be, there can be some hazardous conditions, and safety is utmost importance. So some companies, we've implemented safety bonus programs. Say if there's certain trainings are completed and no incidences for a certain number of days. Again, working closely with the owners of the company and the key people there to identify what would be an incentive, a stretch, helping people work towards safety, but also incentivizing them when that happens. And oftentimes these profit sharing plans, these employee bonus programs are paid out quarterly. We would sit down and look and say, hey, where are we? How do we do? Are we profitable? And really a key component of all of this is educating the employees, whether they're key and senior or they're hourly workers. It's really important to help them be a part of the conversation. Say, hey, here's our program. Here's what it looks like. Here's where we are today. Here's our productivity goals. Let's see what we can do in the next 2 months to drive up this. Maybe one quarter it doesn't happen. But this is also something that can be really a good tool to help motivate and also help retain key employees. So just to leave off here, some other accounting and consulting services that we can provide specific to manufacturing include executive leadership advisory, inventory management and job costing, which can be very beneficial and important, product line profitability, cash flow analysis, internal control evaluation, operational reviews, again, bookkeeping and accounting services, and then quarterly strategy sessions. Some of these things, especially in the middle from inventory to bookkeeping, some of these things you may already have a really good handle on this. If you have audited financial statements, some of this is going to be required. Some of it's going to go beyond those financial statements to really help you as a business owner or financial person within the company to really drive profitability, and we can help work with that. To touch base lastly on this quarterly strategy sessions, what this is a service that we provide. We have a team of seasoned professionals, experts in what they do, and they work very closely with management of the company on a multitude of topics within the company and say, okay, hey, let's take a look. Let's really look at the numbers. Let's look at your balance sheet. Let's look at your P&L. Let's look at your cash flow. Let's look at how is the company doing? How can we assess areas that are lacking? What can we do to improve those areas? Where are areas of concern? What can we do? What are goals? How can we work to those goals? These quarterly sessions, they are very in-depth. They are very beneficial and have proved for all of our clients that have partaken, that have invested in these strategy sessions. They are worth the time. They are worth the effort. They are worth the energy. They are worth the cost to kind of work through all that. Our clients, we did analysis. Every client that has worked through quarterly strategy sessions over the last year or two have double-digit increased bottom line. And they're just really what it comes down to is taking that time to look and say, hey, are we doing good? Yeah, we're doing good. We're having a good year. As to really getting to know the numbers and really, really honing in on those areas to say, we're having a good year, but is there something we're missing? Is there a cost that really we could shave down? And if we just ask the question. So those are really beneficial. So again, we're always here to help, always happy to pick up the phone, have a conversation. Again, my name is Andrew Schuller. I'm in the Medina office, Cork & Krause CPAs and Consultants.
All right, let's get rolling. My name is Jason Lee. I'm the marketing guy at Mentor Public Library. I'm also a big believer in not wasting your time. So let's get right into it by saying the quiet part out loud. I am presenting this talk to you, 10 things you don't know about Mentor Public Library, because if you haven't been to the library recently, you probably don't know what the library does, or everything the library does, I should say. You probably have a narrow definition of the library. Maybe even if you've been to the library recently, but only use it in one specific way. You may think of the library as the books and shushing place. Don't get me wrong, we have a lot of books. If you have a Mentor Public Library card, that gives you access to 2.5 million books throughout the CleveNet Consortium. So a lot of books, less shushing. But it does a lot of things beyond that. And I want to make sure you know the things beyond that. Not just because it's useful to other people, and I want you to know that we do those things for other people, but just in case you're ever in a situation where you need one of the services that I'm going to talk about, or even a similar service, I want you to think of your local library. And I want to add one more thing before we get started. Even if you don't live near Mentor, we're on the internet, you could be anywhere right now. Even if you don't live in Northeast Ohio, there is a good chance your local library offers similar services. Maybe not all of them, but certainly some of them, and probably ones beyond what I'm going to discuss. So, next time you are looking for an idiosyncratic service that you probably aren't going to need all the time, contact your local library, because there is a good chance that they offer it. One last caveat. I'm not going to use the word free a lot. And that's not because there's a charge to use these services. It's because you already pay for these services with your tax dollars. And I want to make sure you get as good a return on that investment as possible. So not free, but a great value. And I want to make sure you get as much value out of it as possible. You ready? Because I'm ready. So we offer notary services without charge. Still finding ways to say not free. It's without charge. And I feel like we're one of the last places that offer notary services without charge. I myself am a notary, and what I often hear is we couldn't find anywhere else. Now, there are a couple of types of documents that the library doesn't notarize for liability issues, real estate, I-9s, electric notarizations, documents that aren't in the notary's primary language, that sort of thing. But the vast majority of things we do notarize, and it won't cost you any money. We employ notaries at all 4 of our branches. Mentor Public Library has 4, the one on Mentor Avenue, one up in Mentor on the Lake, Headlands Branch, and the hub inside of Mentor High School. If you need a notary, I recommend calling ahead to make sure that someone's on staff that day. We also offer passport and photo services. Yes, both, at our main branch. That service is by appointment only. Once again, if you don't live near Mentor, or if you live even beyond Ohio, there is still a good possibility that your library offers these services, so it might be worth contacting them. Next up, databases. Databases are probably the most useful thing the library offers, that libraries in general offer, that you're not thinking about unless you're a student. For example, if you own a business and you are paying for a Morningstar Investment Research Center subscription, stop it. You could be using the libraries. We offer free access to dozens of databases. A lot of them are designed specifically for students. However, we have some that are pertinent specifically for business owners. That includes Data Axle. If you've ever heard of Reference USA, same thing, got rebranded. It's really useful if you're trying to gather consumer data. We also have a database called Small Business Reference Center. One guess who could work really well for? Small business owners. It offers articles and how-to videos on topics like management, industry information, growing your business, paying your taxes, marketing, coaching an employee, interviewing a candidate, presenting to customers, and more. No cost to use it through your library. We also offer useful databases that aren't related to your business, Ancestry.com, Chilton for car repairs, Consumer Reports. My favorite database that we offer helps me identify different types of trees. I use it all the time when I'm hiking with my kids. If you're trying to find the databases on our website is mentorpl.org. You click on research and go to databases. I know that's buried off the front. That's one of the reasons people don't know about the databases enough. I apologize. mentorpl.org, research databases, or just call us and ask for a librarian. We'd love to help people find stuff. We also host a service that offers online classes and tutorials. If you're persnickety, I guess that qualifies as a type of database, but also if you're persnickety, I can't make you happy. You're already choosing to be unhappy. You should choose happiness instead. All right, so my favorite online tutorial service is called LinkedIn Learning. You may remember it as lynda.com from before LinkedIn buying it. Once again, rebrand. They happen. You don't need a LinkedIn account to use it. It is without cost with your library card. And it offers thousands of different online video courses. Yeah, they're video-based courses. So if you're a visual learner, perfect. Everything from screenwriting to spreadsheets, finance to photography, making mobile apps to music composition. It also offers training for popular software and developer tools like the Microsoft Office suite, Adobe Creative Suite, and several coding languages. I've personally used LinkedIn Learning to improve my graphic design, video editing, and the library search engine optimization. So all of those courses are available for your use with LinkedIn Learning. Don't need a LinkedIn account, do need a library card. And the educational videos range from quick bites to deep dives, but even the deep dives into topics are still broken into smaller chunks, so you can learn a little bit at a time instead of trying to fit a 4-hour seminar into a day. We're still on online classes here, but this one is mainly for students. I think it's important, so I'm still going to mention it. Tutor.com offers real one-on-one academic assistance to students of all ages that can help with homework, writing a paper, studying for tests, or even preparing a resume. And I do mean real one-on-one academic assistance. This is not a chat bot working you through a problem. Tutors are available to provide individualized help from 2 p.m. to midnight every day of the week. I think there are like 3 holidays where it's closed. Like if you need a tutor at 5 p.m. on Christmas, you might have to wait till December 26th. But otherwise, they are there and ready to help you. You can also submit papers, including resumes and math problems 24/7, and a tutor will review and assist you with the problem. The tutors are both English and Spanish speaking. They're available on more than 250 subjects, so obviously math, science, writing, reading comprehension, computer science, history, study and life skills, career and job planning, parent coaching, and test prep for PSAT, SAT, and ACT. We received a grant from the Ohio Department of Education to offer this database, so we want as many people to use it as possible. One last online class before I move on. We offer a database named Mango Languages that teaches different languages. You can find it on the website. When you go under databases, Mango Languages. I use it to brush up on my Spanish before a recent vacation. It's a lot like Duolingo, except no cost. Well, I get that there's a free version of Duolingo. It's also, you get what you pay for. All right, you probably already know that you can print papers at the library and fax them too. You might not realize that there's also a pair of 3D printers at our main branch and a large format printer. So people can use the 3D printers to fabricate everything from game pieces to sets for model railroads. I use them to make my kids T-Rex skulls that they could paint, because I think every child should have a T-Rex skull. We also have a large format printer if you need to make posters or banners. If you know the Mentor Public Library really well, you're saying, well, yeah, there's a lot of stuff in the Makerspace. I haven't gotten to the Makerspace yet. Wait, be patient. We're going to get there. It's going to be awesome. Before we get there, though, I want to talk about some of the newspapers and magazines from around the world that you can access without charge with your library card. The image you're looking at now is from a digital service called Press Reader. It gives you access to The Economist, USA Today, and publications from hundreds of countries in dozens of languages from around the world. We found it's especially popular with people who've immigrated to Mentor and throughout Northeast Ohio and want to stay up to date on the news from their home country. But it's also really valuable if you have a business that does business throughout the world. Meanwhile, we have another digital service called Newsbank. It gives you access to dozens of Ohio newspapers, including Akron Beacon Journal, Columbus Dispatch, Toledo Blade. If you're local, we're in Mentor. It allows you to browse more than 20 years of the local daily newspaper, the News Herald. It also gives you access to national magazines, including The Atlantic, Smithsonian, Popular Science, National Review. We also have another digital service that focuses on popular magazines called Flipster, including People, Cosmo, Bon Appetit, New Yorker, Highlights, Runner's World, Rolling Stone. So what I'm saying is if you're paying for a subscription for everything from The Economist to Rolling Stone to Cosmo to The Atlantic, you could be reading these for free with your library card. We made it to the hub. I told you we would. So to make a long story really concise, a long time ago, let me try that from the top. To make a long story short, Mentor Schools received an awesome grant to renovate their Mentor High School's library. They added an awesome makerspace. The makerspace was so awesome that the schools reached out to us and said, hey, do you want to make this available to the public? And we, because we are not great fools, immediately agreed. So from 3 to 8 p.m., Monday through Thursday, we run the Hub as one of our branches and host programs there. People can also book appointments where we help them use the makerspace equipment. That includes a vinyl cutter, large format printer, laser engraver, heat press, button maker, Cricut machine, binding machine, sublimation printer, and green screen studio. I've personally used about half of these machines. I've customized t-shirts. I've used the laser engraver to make a gift for my wife. I use the green screen studio to make library videos. In fact, the binding machine, you know what? I can do this. I have an example on me. I once used the binding machine to take my children's drawings and turn them into a chapbook that I could give to their grandparents as a Parents' Day gift. It was Mother's Day gift specifically. So all sorts of equipment that you can use in all sorts of ways. Really fun stuff. And if you're ever thinking to yourself, that sounds neat, but I have no idea what to do with those machines, visit the Hub sometime. Visit the Hub. Our coworkers would be happy to show you examples of the various things you can make. There is a really good chance that you have an idea in the back of your head that you can actually make real with the equipment at the Makerspace. So really grateful for the schools for making this available to the public. Speaking of the Hub's Makerspace, I want to take a second to thank our host today, AWT. Thanks to AWT and a grant from the Ohio Department of Education, we were able to have a field trip for the AWT Summer Manufacturing Institute to the Hub. What you're seeing right now in front of you is a lot of bright kids who are going to be the future of manufacturing, and we'll be doing it again this summer. So the library, most libraries, once again, if you're not in Northeast Ohio, there's a good chance your local library still does this, have rooms available that you can rent as a meeting place. We have rooms at our Main and Lake branches that you can rent, and nonprofits and local charities can rent them for free. The biggest room can fit about 80, depending on your setup. It has Wi-Fi, projectors, all of that. They're pretty popular, so our calendar does fill up pretty quickly, and there is some small type. For example, you can only rent 4 times in the span of 4 months to give as many organizations as possible an opportunity to use the room. But if you can't get a room, we also have a Zoom license that businesses can borrow. You can host up to 100 people for 2 hours at a time. So that's useful if you're only going to need Zoom once and don't want to pay for a subscription. All right, we're a library. We still have books, 2.5 of them in the Cleveland Consortium. But we also have CDs, DVDs, Blu-rays, video games, the things you expect to find at a library. But we also have a lot of things that we circulate you probably don't realize. Puzzles, board games. What you're looking at is a game called Animal on Animal. It's a stacking game. It's great for children's dexterity. It's a lot of fun, and I refuse to play my son anymore because he cheats. Yeah, I said it. But you can't borrow it from the library, and if your 7-year-old doesn't cheat, then you can have a really fun time. Puzzles, board games, traffic cones if you're trying to teach your kid how to drive, or if you just need to block off a block party. Video game consoles. That's right, you can borrow video game consoles from us. Binoculars, telescopes, bocce set, exercise gear, light therapy lamps if you are affected by seasonal affective disorder, crocheting kits, pom-pom maker, looms, karaoke machines, turntables, hotspots if you're traveling. And if I'm going to put a photo of my son up, this is my daughter. She's using one of our cake pans. And we do offer cake pans, everything from mini muffins to donut pans to characters in case you need a birthday cake shaped like Elmo or a unicorn. A question that we're already starting to receive is, can you get eclipse glasses from the library? And I should say, for anyone who's watching it outside of the region, on April 8th, there will be a total solar eclipse that's visible in our neck of the woods. And yes, you can get eclipse glasses from the libraries. Starting in March, people will be able to get eclipse glasses from our main branch. It's capped at 2 pairs for families, so we can give them to as many families as possible. I don't want to sideline this entire talk into the eclipse discussion. For more information on that, visit mentorpl.org/eclipse. Once again, that's mentorpl.org/eclipse. And lest any viewer think that I favor one child over the other, I should make it clear, my daughter cheats at Animal on Animal too. I don't know who they get it from. All right, so if you use Audible, Spotify, Netflix, any of these services, there is probably a library equivalent that you could be using for free. Now, I don't want to exaggerate. If you want to watch Stranger Things or something that's specifically owned by one outlet, you're probably still going to have to get that outlet. But there are services that have huge libraries of ebooks, audiobooks, music, movies, videos that you could be streaming. So before you sign on for one more streaming service, you might want to look at the library's offerings first. You can read ebooks on Libby or Hoopla. You can stream music on Freegal and Hoopla. You can stream movies, TV shows, and documentaries on Canopy and, again, Hoopla. Typically, I'd offer a demo of these services, but I'm mindful of the fact that your time is precious. When in doubt, go to mentorpl.org, and you can link directly to any of them. You can also ask us about it the next time you're at your library. And if you're watching this from outside Mentor Public Library's service area, contact your local library. Because even if they don't have the specific services I'm mentioning, they probably have similar ones. And all of these digital services that I've mentioned, Canopy, Hoopla, Libby, they all have apps so you can use them on your preferred device. Personally, I listen to music all the time on Freegal and Hoopla, and I also stream video on Canopy all the time. In fact, that Great Courses, the African Safari one, watched it. It was awesome. Didn't cost me any money. I want to conclude with a new service that we've started offering this year. You can now digitize and preserve your photos, slides, and negatives for future generations for free with our new Legacy Lab. We have ClearClick and Kodak scanners that you can use to digitize your images. If you're interested, give Mentor Public Library a call. We can set up a time to work with you. And in the next few weeks, you get the special preview. In the next few weeks, we'll be launching our membership passes collection. You'll be able to borrow a membership from Holden Forests and Gardens, Stan Hewitt, Western Reserve Historical Society, and the Akron Zoo. It's a great way to visit somewhere you've never been before or haven't been there in a while. I want to wrap up real quick with some statistics. We haven't finished our 2023 statistics. I include them when I can, but these are numbers for 2022. So you get a sense of the many ways that people use your local library. We had 250,000 visitors in 2022 and then more in 2023. People borrowed 1.6 million items. We hosted 2,000 programs in 2022 and then nearly 3,000 in 2023. We've got about 92,000 people who attend these programs. We have about 70,000 cardholders, and we added 4,700 new ones in 2022. Passports, notaries, COVID test kits, notarized documents. And if you have a smartphone, you may not realize the value that libraries have with public computers. You may think of it as an antiquated offering, but our public computers got used 40,000 times in 2022. So we're still a very important way for people to connect to the internet. We also had 393,000 visitors to our website. I want to thank you so much for joining me today, and I can't thank AWT enough for allowing us to speak with you. I hope you have a wonderful day.